continue our introduction to project management with a discussion of the project life cycle. In this presentation, we'll learn the progression of phases in the typical project life cycle, and we'll also learn how to control the project by the use of phase gates. The project life cycle is the series of phases that a project passes through from its start to its completion. Every project has a sort of generic life cycle. The progression is typically 1. Starting the project, 2. Organizing and preparing, 3. Carrying out the work, and 4. Ending the project. There are a variety of relationships possible between the phases. They could happen in sequence, they could be iterative, or they could actually occur overlapping and simultaneously. Now, the project life cycle is different from the product life cycle. When we're talking about product development as a project, this is referred to as the developmental life cycle. There are several common life cycle types. The first is called predictive or plan-driven. In this case, it's possible at the very beginning of the project to define in detail the scope, schedule, and cost requirements. What's more, each of these characteristics must require tight control during the execution. The next option is iterative. In this case, scope is defined early, while schedule and cost are formed with progressive elaboration. And as you develop iterations for schedule and cost, there may also be revisions to scope, and ultimately the iterations will build the final product. The incremental option is very similar to iterative, but you're building the product incrementally, so you are adding features and providing intermediary versions of the deliverable up until the final deliverable is complete. With the adaptive, change-driven, or as it's most commonly known, agile life cycle, scope is defined and approved at the start of each iteration. So for each iteration, you start fresh with a new definition for scope, schedule, and cost. And you will deliver intermediary deliverables at the end of each iteration. Another possibility is a hybrid life cycle. This can combine any of the previous life cycles we've discussed. Some elements might be predictive, some might be agile. Some phases of a project could be predictive and some could be agile. So this is basically any possible combination of the other life cycles. The best life cycle for each project will be different, and it depends on the judgment of the project management team. In general, there needs to be a certain amount of flexibility in the definition of the life cycle so that each phase will consist of the optimal selection of processes, and even the definition of the phase itself could be revised based on need. As we said, the project life cycle is distinct from the product life cycle. A product life cycle is also made of phases, but it takes the product all the way from its conception through its obsolescence. A project could take place at any point in the product life cycle. So what is a project phase? A project phase is a collection of logically related project activities that culminates in the completion of one or more deliverables. Phases have attributes such as a descriptive name. You would want to know the total number of phases in the project, and for each phase, understand its duration, its resource requirements, and both entrance criteria as well as exit criteria. The definition of the phases will depend on factors such as the nature of the project, management needs, that means management within the project itself, as well as procedures and best practices within the organization. There could also be industry standards for defining phases. Then, in addition, there may be constraints imposed by legal, business, or technology factors. The project could have logical decision points, and the phases should correspond to those decision points. So each phase should receive a name that describes the work performed. The reason that you divide a project into phases is to break the entire project into smaller pieces that are easier to manage and take control of. Some examples of phase names are illustrated here, such as concept development, design, test, and lessons learned. Phases are also defined by their phase gates. A phase gate is a review at the end of a phase in which a decision is made to continue to the next phase, or to continue with modification, or to end the project or program. So the phase gate is a performance assessment. You will compare the project performance to its planning documents, such as the business case, the project charter, the project management plan, and the benefits management plan. Different organizations have different names for this phase and review. It could be called a phase gate, which is the preferred terminology of the PMBOK, but it's also known as a phase review, stage gate, kill point, phase entrance, or phase exit. During the phase gate, a go, no-go decision is made. The options are, if everything is good and complies with the plan, continue to the next phase. You might choose to continue with some changes. If the progress is not satisfactory, you might choose to repeat either parts of the phase or the entire phase. If there are serious issues putting the health of the entire project at risk, you could make the decision to terminate the project early. So the phase gate gives an opportunity at a scheduled point in the project to assess the health of the project and to take preventive or corrective action. In this presentation, we talked about life cycle and the management of project phases through the use of phase gate assessments.